The old man's hands were scarred from years of fixing engines that no one else could save. But that day, standing outside a luxury car dealership, no one saw his skill, only his skin. The billionaire laughed, tossing him a challenge meant to humiliate. "Fix this Ferrari, and it's yours." Cameras rolled. The crowd whispered. To them, he was just another old black man trying to impress the rich. But what they didn't know, what he didn't say, was that this car held a secret only he could reveal. And when he did, everything changed. For more than 40 years, Samuel Carter had lived a quiet, honest life. 68-year-old retired mechanic from Detroit. His world was small, but full of pride. Every morning, he'd rise before sunrise, pour himself a black coffee, and walk to the small workshop he'd built behind his house. It wasn't much. Old tools, rusted shelves, the smell of oil and history. But to him, it was sacred. It was where he'd raised his sons, taught neighborhood kids to work with their hands, and fixed engines that others had given up on. He never cared about wealth or luxury. Cars were his language, not status symbols. Yet deep down, he carried one quiet memory. Decades ago, he had helped design an engine for a luxury brand before being pushed out, uncredited, for the color of his skin. He never told anyone. He just kept working, quietly proving to himself what others refused to see. One afternoon, while walking past a luxury dealership downtown, Samuel stopped. A bright red Ferrari gleamed behind the glass, hood open, a crowd gathered around it. Its engine was dead, and even the dealer's top technicians couldn't figure out why. The car looked familiar, too familiar. Something inside him stirred, a faint recognition he couldn't ignore. As he stepped closer, a man in an expensive suit turned toward him, smirking. The man's arrogance filled the air before he spoke. Samuel didn't know it yet, but that single glance, that unspoken judgment, would pull him into a public spectacle he never asked for. And this time, walking away wouldn't be an option. Samuel hesitated at the edge of the dealership's lot. The red Ferrari shimmered under the afternoon sun, a perfect symbol of wealth and pride. People in designer clothes crowded around it, whispering complaints about how even the professionals couldn't fix it. And then came the laughter, low, dismissive, and sharp enough to cut through the noise. The man in the tailored suit, Richard Langford, the dealership's owner, stepped forward, his smile polished but cold. He was the kind of man who measured others by their shoes, not their soul. When he noticed Samuel watching, his grin widened. "You look like you've got something to say, old man," he said, tone dripping with mockery. The crowd chuckled, sensing entertainment. Samuel shook his head politely, just curious about the engine. "Looks like it's not getting—" "Oh, please," Richard interrupted, waving a hand. "You think you know more than my engineers? What are you, a janitor? You probably fix lawnmowers, not Ferraris." The laughter grew louder. A phone came up, recording. Samuel's chest tightened, but he stayed calm. "I used to work with engines like this," he said softly. "If you'd let me take a look," Richard smirked. "Fine then. Tell you what, if you can fix it, it's yours." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew it was a joke, a cruel public challenge meant to humiliate him. Cameras zoomed in. Samuel hesitated, feeling the weight of every stare. He could walk away, pretend he didn't hear, but something deeper, something tired of being dismissed, held him still. "All right," he said. "I'll try." The laughter died. Richard's eyebrows lifted in surprise, but he stepped aside, motioning grandly like a showman introducing an act. Samuel moved toward the Ferrari, feeling the heat radiating off its metal. His hands, steady despite his age, lifted the hood. Inside, chaos, tangled wires, scorched metal, careless mistakes hidden behind luxury polish. He could almost see the fingerprints of his old design, the one he'd helped build years ago before being erased from the project. That's why the engine looked familiar. It was familiar. It was his, the crowd muttered. "He's not actually doing it, is he?" one woman whispered. "This is embarrassing." Another man snickered. "He'll probably break it more." Minutes passed. Samuel worked silently, ignoring the eyes on him. Every click of a wrench, every twist of a bolt was a quiet defiance. Sweat trickled down his neck, but his movements were sure. Richard leaned against a post, arms crossed, bored. Then a faint sound, the hum of life. The engine coughed once, twice, and roared awake. Gasps filled the air. The Ferrari's growl silenced the laughter. Samuel stepped back slowly, his face unreadable. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Richard pushed forward, his face pale. You must have done something before." "That's impossible." Samuel looked at him calmly. "No tricks, just knowledge." The phones were still recording, the crowd now whispering in awe instead of mockery. Richard forced a smile, trying to recover. "Well, a deal's a deal, right?" he joked weakly, hoping to turn the crowd back to his side. But Samuel didn't smile. The silence around him was heavy, thick with the weight of realization. This wasn't about a car. It was about being seen, finally, undeniably, for what he was capable of. And though he had proven himself. Samuel could sense something darker in Richard's eyes. A man like that wouldn't let his pride die quietly. The Ferrari had come to life, but so had the storm that would follow. The sound of the Ferrari's engine still echoed through the lot when Richard's forced laughter broke the silence. "Well, congratulations, old man," he sneered, clapping slowly. "You really made it run. Though you didn't actually think I'd hand you the keys, did you?" The crowd shifted uneasily. Cameras were still rolling, capturing every word. Samuel stayed quiet, his gaze steady. He had faced this tone before, the kind of voice that dressed cruelty and politeness, hiding venom behind charm. Richard stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You embarrassed me in front of my customers. I can't have that. Security!" Two guards in black suits moved in quickly, grabbing Samuel by the arms. The crowd gasped as one of the phones tilted, filming the scene. "Let go of him," someone shouted, but no one dared step forward. Richard smirked, waving the Ferrari keys like a trophy. "You think a man like you belongs behind the wheel of a car like this?" His words cut through the air like a knife. "You people are always reaching for things you'll never have." For a brief moment, Samuel felt every year of his life pressed down on him, every door slammed, every name whispered, every chance stolen. His chest tightened, not from fear, but from something heavier, exhaustion. Yet even as the guards tried to pull him away, his voice came calm and strong. "I designed that engine," he said. The words hung in the air, powerful enough to freeze the guards in place. Richard blinked, confusion flickering across his face. "What did you say?" Samuel met his eyes. "The year was 1984. The company you brag about bought my design and erased my name. That engine under your hood? It was built by these hands long before you learned how to polish your shoes." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Phones zoomed in. Richard's smug smile faltered, replaced by a nervous twitch. Samuel pulled free from the guards, standing tall despite his trembling hands. "You wanted a show," he said quietly. "Now the world will see who you really are." The Ferrari's engine purred beside them, alive, undeniable, and proof that the truth had finally found its voice. And as the crowd turned on Richard, the cameras kept rolling. The next morning, the video had already spread across every social platform. Millions watched the moment an old black mechanic humiliated a millionaire with nothing but skill, patience, and truth. Headlines called it the Ferrari lesson. Some praised Samuel for his calm strength. Others debated, twisted, and dissected what had happened. But for Samuel, none of that mattered. He didn't need fame. He had spent his whole life being invisible. Now the world had simply seen what should have been seen all along. Richard Langford, the once confident billionaire, vanished from public view for weeks. The dealership issued a statement calling the event a misunderstanding, but the damage was done. The video had captured everything: the tone in his voice, the contempt in his smile, the fear when the truth surfaced. There was no editing that away. Samuel went back to his small workshop, the same creaky walls and rusted shelves. But things were different now. Strangers began stopping by, not to gawk, but to learn. Young men and women, especially those who had been told they'd never be enough, came to listen. They didn't see an old man. They saw resilience. One reporter asked him if he forgave Richard. Samuel looked down at his hands. The same hands that had built engines, held his children, and borne the weight of a lifetime of prejudice. "Forgiveness isn't for him," he said quietly. "It's for me. I can't carry anger any longer. I've got work to do." He turned back to the hood of a worn-down car, tightening a bolt with the same steady patience that had carried him through years of being overlooked. But his story wasn't just his. It became a mirror. People began to ask harder questions, not about cars, but about how many brilliant minds had been dismissed because of the color of their skin. How many Samuel Carters had walked away unseen, unheard, uncredited. In a world obsessed with status, it took an old man and a broken Ferrari to remind everyone that dignity can't be bought and talent doesn't need permission to exist. When the camera had captured that moment, no one realized it would become a symbol, not of revenge, but of quiet triumph. Because sometimes, justice doesn't roar. It hums softly, like an engine finally set free. And now, the question lingers. How many more truths are waiting under the hood? If only the world stopped long enough to listen.